Jungkook asks Jimin to attend his wedding. His answer touches everything. A wedding invitation shatters old wounds as Jungkook faces Jimin, the one person whose answer could change everything forever. Will you come to my wedding? The question fell between them like a blade, sharp and irreversible. Jimin didn't move. The room was too quiet, so quiet that even the faint hum of the city outside felt intrusive, like it didn't belong in the same world as this moment. The faint scent of rain clung to Jungkook's coat, droplets still sliding from the dark strands of his hair onto the wooden floor. Jimin stared at him, eyes wide but unreadable, as if his mind had momentarily refused to process the words. His fingers, loosely wrapped around a glass of untouched whiskey, tightened just enough for the ice to clink, a fragile sound that echoed louder than it should have. Jungkook stepped forward. I mean it, he said, voice steadier than he felt. I want you there. The truth was, he hadn't planned to say it like this. Not after 3 years of silence. Not after everything that had been left unfinished, unsaid, buried beneath pride and distance. But standing there now, soaked from the storm, staring at the only person who had ever truly understood him, he realized there had never been a right way to ask. Jimin finally let out a quiet breath. A wedding, he repeated softly, almost to himself. His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. You disappear for years, and then you come back with that. There was no anger in his voice. That was what made it worse. Jungkook swallowed. I didn't disappear. Jimin raised an eyebrow, the faintest flicker of something sharp crossing his face. No, because from where I was standing, it looked exactly like that. The air thickened. Memories pressed in from all sides, late nights filled with laughter, arguments that never found resolution, promises made in whispers that neither of them had been brave enough to keep. Jungkook felt them all at once, like waves crashing against a shore he had tried to abandon. I had my reasons, Jungkook said quietly. Jimin let out a dry laugh, setting the glass down on the table with a soft clink. Of course you did. You always do. There it was, not anger, something deeper, something heavier. Disappointment, maybe, or something that had once been love twisted into something unrecognizable. Jungkook stepped closer, closing the distance that had once been effortless between them. Now, it felt like crossing a battlefield. Jimin, he said more gently this time, I'm not here to fight. Then why are you here? Jimin shot back, finally meeting his gaze directly. His eyes were darker than Jungkook remembered, carrying shadows that hadn't been there before. To show me how happy you are, to prove that you moved on. The words hit harder than Jungkook expected. No, he said, shaking his head. I'm here because it doesn't feel right without you. Silence followed. Jimin blinked, just once, as if the sentence had caught him off guard. That's a strange thing to say, he murmured. It's the truth. Jimin turned away then, walking slowly toward the window. Rain streaked down the glass, distorting the city lights into blurred lines of gold and white. He rested his hand against the cold surface, his reflection faint and fragmented. You're getting married, he said after a moment. You've built a whole life, and now you're telling me it doesn't feel right. Jungkook hesitated. Because the truth was complicated. Because the truth was dangerous. Because the truth had a name, and it wasn't the one printed on the wedding invitation. Jungkook exhaled, running a hand through his hair. I don't want to look out into that crowd and not see you there. I don't want to pretend that you were never part of. Don't. Jimin's voice cut through him, sharp and immediate. Don't rewrite things to make yourself feel better, he said, turning back around. His expression had hardened now, the vulnerability from moments ago buried beneath something colder. You made your choices, Jungkook. You walked away. I didn't walk away from you. Then what did you do? The question lingered, heavy and inescapable. Jungkook opened his mouth, but no words came out. Because there was no simple answer. Because leaving had been easier than staying. Because staying would have meant facing feelings he hadn't been ready to name. Jimin watched him closely, as if searching for something some trace of the person he used to know. When he didn't find it, his shoulders relaxed slightly, a quiet resignation settling in. "That's what I thought," he said softly. Jungkook felt something twist painfully in his chest. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," he said. "I'm not even asking you to understand. I want you there." Jimin tilted his head, studying him in a way that made Jungkook feel exposed. "Why?" The question was simple, but it carried weight. Jungkook hesitated again. Because the answer wasn't something he could say out loud. "Not yet." "Because you matter," he said finally. Jimin's lips pressed into a thin line. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Jimin let out a slow breath, running a hand through his hair, a familiar gesture that sent a sharp ache through Jungkook's chest. "You always did this," Jimin said quietly, "saying just enough to make me stay, but never enough to make me understand. That's not fair, isn't it?" Their eyes met again, and this time neither looked away. The storm outside intensified, rain pounding harder against the windows, as if echoing the tension inside the room. Jungkook took another step forward, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. "I'm trying now." Jimin's gaze softened, just for a second. Then it hardened again. "Too late," he said. The words were soft, but they landed like a verdict. Jungkook felt the weight of them settle in his chest, heavy and suffocating. "Is it?" he asked, barely audible. Jimin didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked past Jungkook, close enough for their shoulders to almost brush. The faint scent of his cologne lingered in the air, familiar, unchanged, dangerously comforting. He stopped at the door. For a moment, Jungkook thought he would leave. But then Jimin spoke. "You're getting married," he said, his back still turned. "That's not something you ask someone like me to be part of, unless you're ready to face what that really means." Jungkook's heart pounded. "And what does it mean?" he asked. Jimin's hand rested on the doorknob. "It means," he said slowly, "that you're asking me to watch you choose someone else and pretend it doesn't break me." The words hung in the air, raw and unguarded. Jungkook felt something inside him crack. "I never wanted to hurt you," he said. Jimin let out a quiet, almost bitter laugh. "And yet here we are." Silence stretched between them again, heavier than before. Then, after what felt like an eternity, Jimin turned his head slightly, just enough for Jungkook to see the faintest glimpse of his expression. "Tell me one thing," he said. Jungkook nodded, his throat tight. "Anything." Jimin's eyes met his, and for the first time since Jungkook had walked in, there was no anger, no sarcasm, only something painfully honest. "When you look at her," Jimin said softly, "do you feel the same way you did when you looked at me?" The question stole the air from Jungkook's lungs. He opened his mouth, but no answer came. And in that silence, everything was already understood. Jimin closed his eyes briefly, as if bracing himself against something unseen. Then he nodded, once almost imperceptibly. "I'll give you my answer," he said, his voice steady again, "but not tonight." He opened the door. Cold air rushed in, carrying the sound of the storm with it. Jungkook stood frozen, watching as Jimin stepped out into the rain without looking back. And for the first time since he had decided to get married, Jungkook felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel before. Doubt. The rain hadn't stopped. It followed Jungkook all the way home, clinging to him like a second skin, seeping into his thoughts until everything felt damp, heavy, and unfinished. He didn't remember unlocking the door, didn't remember taking off his shoes, didn't even notice the lights already on until a voice cut through the haze. "You're late." He froze. She stood by the dining table, arms crossed, her expression calm but watchful. The soft glow of the chandelier painted her in warm gold, a stark contrast to the storm he had just stepped out of. "I was with someone," Jungkook said, his voice quieter than usual. "I figured." She tilted her head slightly. "You don't look like someone who just had a casual meeting." Jungkook exhaled slowly, running a hand through his damp hair. It wasn't casual. She studied him for a moment longer before walking closer, her heels clicking softly against the floor. Was it him? The question landed with precision. Jungkook didn't answer right away. He didn't need to. Her lips pressed together, the faintest crack appearing in her composed demeanor. You went to see Jimin. Yes. Silence stretched between them, thick and uncomfortable. And, she asked. Jungkook hesitated, the memory of Jimin's voice replaying in his mind. Asterisk, you're asking me to watch you choose someone else, and pretend it doesn't break me. He hasn't given me an answer yet, Jungkook said. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Answer to what? Jungkook met her gaze. I asked him to come to the wedding. For a split second, something flickered across her face, shock, disbelief, something sharper beneath it, but it vanished almost instantly. You what? She said, her voice dangerously calm. I want him there. Why? The question came faster this time, sharper, less controlled. Jungkook swallowed. Because he's important to me. She let out a short, humorless laugh. Important. Yes. Important enough to invite him to our wedding, she pressed, her voice rising now. Important enough to stand there while she stopped herself, shaking her head. Do you even hear yourself? Jungkook's chest tightened. It's not like that. Then what is it like, Jungkook? She demanded, stepping closer. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're trying to bring your past into something that's supposed to be our future. Her words hit harder than he expected. I'm not trying to ruin anything, he said, his voice firming. I just don't want to pretend that part of my life never existed. Part of your life, she echoed, or part of your heart. The question cut deep. Jungkook didn't answer. He couldn't. And that silence said everything. She stared at him, searching his face as if hoping he would deny it, hoping he would give her something, anything to hold on to. When he didn't, her expression shifted, something fragile breaking beneath the surface. So it's true, she said softly. Jungkook frowned. What is? You never really let him go. The words hung in the air, undeniable. That's not, Jungkook started, but his voice faltered. Because even he didn't know how to finish that sentence. She nodded slowly, as if confirming something she had long suspected. I always wondered, she admitted, why you never talked about him, why his name felt like something forbidden. Jungkook looked away. You should have told me, she continued, her voice trembling slightly despite her effort to stay composed. Before all of this, before the engagement, before I said yes to a future that apparently still has someone else in it. It's not like that, Jungkook repeated, but this time the words sounded weaker. Then explain it to me, she said, her eyes locking onto his. Explain why you look like that just from seeing him again. Jungkook clenched his jaw. Because she was right. Because he did look different. Because something inside him had shifted the moment Jimin opened that door. I just needed closure, he said finally. She let out a bitter laugh. Closure doesn't look like this, Jungkook. This, she gestured toward him, her voice breaking slightly, this looks like something unfinished. Her words echoed in his chest. Unfinished. That was exactly what it was. And that was exactly what scared him. You're overthinking this, he said, though even he didn't believe it. No, she said firmly. I think I'm finally seeing it clearly. She stepped back, creating distance between them. Do you love me? She asked suddenly. The question hit him like a punch. Of course I do, he answered immediately. But something about the way he said it, too fast, too automatic, made her expression falter. And him? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jungkook froze. The room felt smaller, suffocating. He started, but the words wouldn't come. Because this time, silence wasn't just an answer. It was the truth. She closed her eyes briefly, as if bracing herself. That's what I thought, she said quietly. Jungkook took a step toward her. Listen. No, she interrupted, holding up a hand. You listen. Her voice was steady now, but there was something fragile underneath it, something on the verge of collapse. I'm not going to compete with a ghost, Jungkook, she said. I'm not going to stand at the altar wondering if the man I'm marrying is thinking about someone else. I wouldn't do that, he said quickly. You already are, she replied. The words left no room for argument. Jungkook felt the weight of them settle heavily in his chest. I need time, she continued, her voice softening slightly. To think, to figure out if this is something I can live with. Jungkook nodded slowly, though every part of him resisted the idea. Okay, he said. She looked at him one last time, her eyes lingering as if trying to memorize something, or perhaps let it go. Maybe inviting him wasn't the problem, she added quietly. Maybe it just revealed one. And then she turned and walked away, leaving Jungkook alone in the silence. Hours later, Jungkook found himself standing in front of Jimin's building again. The storm had calmed, but the air was still thick with moisture, the streets reflecting the city lights like shattered glass. He didn't remember deciding to come here. He just did. His hand hovered over the intercom, hesitating. Then he pressed it. Static crackled. A pause. And then, Jungkook. Jimin's voice, slightly distorted through the speaker, still carried that same familiar tone. Jungkook exhaled. We need to talk. There was a brief silence on the other end. About what? Jimin asked. About everything. Another pause. Longer this time. Then a soft click. The door unlocked. Jungkook pushed it open and stepped inside, his heartbeat echoing in his ears as he made his way up the stairs. When he reached the apartment, the door was already open. Jimin stood there, leaning against the frame, his expression unreadable. You really don't know when to stop, do you? He said. Jungkook let out a quiet breath. Neither do you. Jimin raised an eyebrow, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. I stopped 3 years ago. The words stung. Jungkook stepped closer. Then why didn't you say no? Jimin's expression faltered for just a second. Because I haven't given you my answer yet, he replied. That's exactly it, Jungkook said, his voice tightening. If it was really over, you wouldn't need time. Jimin straightened, the air between them shifting instantly. You don't get to decide what this means for me, he said, his tone sharp. I'm not deciding, Jungkook shot back. I'm asking. Then ask something honest for once, Jimin said. The tension snapped. Fine, Jungkook said, his voice rising. Why does it still matter to you? Jimin laughed, but there was no humor in it. You really want to ask me that? Yes. Jimin stepped closer, his eyes locking onto Jungkook, with an intensity that made his chest tighten. Because you were everything, Jimin said, his voice low but fierce. And you left like it meant nothing. Jungkook flinched. That's not true. Then prove it, Jimin challenged. Stand here and tell me it didn't matter. Tell me I didn't matter. Jungkook opened his mouth. But again, the words refused to come. Jimin nodded slowly, his expression hardening. Exactly. The silence that followed was heavier than any argument. I'm getting married, Jungkook said finally, as if reminding both of them. I know. Then why does this feel like? Jungkook stopped, struggling to find the words. Like you're making a mistake, Jimin finished for him. Jungkook's breath caught. Jimin held his gaze, unflinching. That's your answer, not mine, he said quietly. And for the first time, Jungkook realized something terrifying. This wasn't just about whether Jimin would attend the wedding. It was about whether the wedding should happen at all. You don't get to say that. Jungkook's voice came out sharper than he intended, slicing through the heavy air between them. Jimin didn't flinch. He stood there, only a step away, his expression calm in a way that felt almost dangerous. The dim light of the apartment cast shadows across his face, emphasizing the quiet intensity in his eyes. I already did, Jimin replied, his tone steady. And you heard me. Jungkook clenched his jaw. You think this is a mistake? My life, my choices, everything I've built. I think, Jimin said slowly, that you're standing in front of me at midnight, soaked from the rain, asking questions you already know the answer to. The words hit too close. Jungkook looked away, his breath uneven. You don't know what I feel. Jimin let out a soft, almost incredulous laugh. Don't I? Silence stretched, tense and fragile. You always did this, Jimin continued, his voice quieter now but no less sharp. Hiding behind half-truths, acting like if you don't say it out loud, it won't exist. That's not fair, Jungkook shot back, stepping closer. You think this is easy for me. No, Jimin said, meeting his gaze. I think it's convenient. That word lingered. Convenient, Jungkook repeated, disbelief creeping into his voice. Yes, Jimin said, his eyes hardening. It's convenient to love someone safe, someone who doesn't come with history, someone who doesn't remind you of the things you ran from. Jungkook felt something inside him snap. I didn't run from you, he said, his voice low and dangerous. Then what did you do? Jimin challenged immediately. Because from where I stood, it looked like you disappeared the moment things got real. They were already real. Jungkook raised his voice, frustration spilling over. That was the problem. Jimin froze for a fraction of a second. And Jungkook saw it, the flicker of something unguarded, something vulnerable. You think I didn't feel it? Jungkook continued, his voice shaking now, raw and exposed. You think I didn't know what we were becoming? Then why leave? Jimin demanded, stepping even closer. Why walk away from something you just admitted was real? Because I was scared, Jungkook snapped. The confession echoed in the room, louder than anything else that had been said. Jimin went still. Jungkook swallowed hard, his chest rising and falling rapidly. I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't know what it meant, what it would cost. I didn't know how to choose. Jimin's expression shifted, something softer breaking through the anger. So you chose not to choose, he said quietly. Jungkook closed his eyes briefly. I thought if I walked away, it would fade. Jimin let out a bitter breath. Did it? Jungkook opened his eyes again. No. The answer was immediate, honest, unavoidable. And it changed everything. Jimin looked at him for a long moment, his gaze searching, almost disbelieving. You're getting married, he said finally, his voice quieter now. And you're standing here telling me it never faded. I'm telling you the truth, Jungkook replied. Too late, Jimin said, but this time the words lacked their earlier sharpness. Jungkook shook his head. You keep saying that, but you're still here, you're still listening. Jimin's jaw tightened. That doesn't mean anything. It means something, Jungkook insisted. If it didn't, you would have closed the door on me tonight. Jimin didn't answer. Because he couldn't. And they both knew it. The tension shifted, no longer just anger, no longer just pain. Something deeper surfaced, something unresolved, something dangerously close to the truth neither of them had been able to face before. Say it, Jungkook whispered. Jimin frowned slightly. Say what? That it didn't matter, Jungkook said, his voice barely above a breath. That I didn't matter. Jimin's expression hardened again, defensive walls rising instinctively. You want me to lie to you? He asked. No, Jungkook said. I want you to be honest. Jimin let out a slow breath, running a hand through his hair. He turned away for a moment, packing a few steps as if trying to escape the weight of the conversation. You really don't understand, do you? He said finally. Then explain it to me, Jungkook replied. Jimin stopped, his back still turned. When you left, he began, his voice quieter now, stripped of its earlier sharpness, you didn't just walk away from something real. You walked away from something that was everything. Jungkook felt his chest tighten. I waited, Jimin continued. Longer than I should have, longer than I'm proud of, thinking maybe you'd come back, thinking maybe you'd realize what you threw away. Jungkook's throat went dry. But you didn't, Jimin said, turning back around. His eyes glistened faintly under the dim light, but his voice remained steady. You built a new life, a new future, and now you're asking me to step into it like I was never part of the past you left behind. That's not what I'm asking, Jungkook said quickly. Then what are you asking? Jimin pressed. Jungkook hesitated. Because the answer wasn't simple. Because the answer was something he hadn't fully admitted even to himself. I don't know, he said finally. Jimin let out a quiet, humorless laugh. Of course you don't. But I know this, Jungkook added, stepping closer again. I know that standing here with you feels more real than anything I've felt in a long time. The words hung in the air, dangerous and undeniable. Jimin's breath hitched, just slightly. Don't, he said, almost under his breath. Don't what? Jungkook asked. Don't say things like that, Jimin replied, his voice tightening. Not when you're about to marry someone else. Then tell me I'm wrong, Jungkook challenged. Jimin looked at him, really looked at him, as if trying to find the lie in his eyes. But there was none. That's exactly the problem, Jimin said softly. The space between them felt impossibly small now, charged with everything they had tried to bury. You asked me if I'd come to your wedding, Jimin continued. Do you know what my answer depends on? Jungkook shook his head slightly. It depends on whether I believe you're making the right choice, Jimin said. Jungkook's heart pounded. And what do you believe? Jimin didn't answer right away. Instead, he stepped even closer, close enough that Jungkook could feel the warmth of his breath, could see every detail in his expression. The conflict, the restraint, the lingering emotion that refused to disappear. I think, Jimin said slowly, that you're standing at the edge of something you don't fully understand. Jungkook's voice dropped. And if I am? Then you need to decide, Jimin replied, his gaze unwavering, before it's too late for everyone involved. The words carried weight, not just for Jungkook, not just for Jimin, but for someone else who wasn't in the room, someone who would inevitably be hurt by whatever choice was made. Jungkook exhaled shakily. I thought I already decided. Jimin shook his head, just slightly. No, he said, you avoided deciding. Silence settled again, heavier than before. Jungkook felt the truth of those words sink in, uncomfortable and undeniable. What if I can't? He asked quietly. What if I don't know how to choose? Jimin's expression softened, just a little. Then maybe, he said, you shouldn't be getting married yet. The statement was simple, but it carried the weight of everything. Jungkook looked at him, his mind racing, his heart caught somewhere between fear and something dangerously close to clarity. Is that what you want? He asked. Jimin's gaze faltered for the first time. This isn't about what I want, he said. But it is, Jungkook insisted. You said it yourself, you're the one I. He stopped. Too late. The words had already slipped out, unfinished but understood. Jimin's eyes widened slightly, his breath catching. Don't, he said again, more firmly this time. But Jungkook didn't stop. You're the one I never stopped. He tried again, his voice breaking slightly. Jungkook. Jimin's voice was sharp now, almost desperate. But it wasn't enough. Caring about, Jungkook finished, the safer word replacing the truth he wasn't brave enough to fully say. The silence that followed was suffocating. Jimin stared at him, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. Caring, he repeated quietly. Jungkook nodded, though even he knew it wasn't enough. It was never just that. Jimin let out a slow breath, stepping back, putting distance between them again. That's the word you're choosing, he asked. Jungkook hesitated. And that hesitation said everything. Jimin nodded, a faint, sad smile appearing on his lips. Then I think you already have your answer, he said. Jungkook's chest tightened. That's not. Go home, Jimin interrupted gently. The shift in his tone was subtle, but it changed everything. Jimin. Go home, Jungkook, he repeated. Figure out what you actually feel and what you're willing to risk. Jungkook stood there, frozen, torn between staying and leaving, between past and future, between two choices that suddenly didn't feel so clear anymore. Jimin walked to the door and opened it, the cool night air slipping inside once again. "I'll give you my answer soon," he said quietly. Jungkook looked at him, searching for something, anything, to hold on to. But all he found was uncertainty, and something that felt dangerously like hope. Reluctantly, he stepped toward the door. As he passed Jimin, their shoulders brushed, a brief, electric contact that lingered longer than it should have. Neither of them moved immediately. Neither of them spoke. And for a moment, it felt like time itself had paused, waiting for something, anything, to break the tension. But nothing did. Jungkook stepped out into the night. And this time, the silence followed him. "You're not sleeping here tonight." Jungkook stopped mid-step. The words came from the darkness of the living room, steady but unmistakably strained. The soft glow from a single lamp revealed her sitting on the couch, still dressed, still awake, as if she had never moved since he left. Jungkook closed the door slowly behind him, the quiet click echoing louder than it should. "It's late," he said, though it sounded more like a reflex than an argument. "I know," she replied. "That's why I'm still awake." Her eyes found his immediately, sharp and searching, dissecting every detail. His disheveled hair, the tension in his shoulders, the silence clinging to him like a second skin. "You went back to him," she said. It wasn't a question. Jungkook exhaled. "Yes." A fragile pause settled between them. "And," she asked, her voice quieter now, but no less intense. Jungkook hesitated, the memory of Jimin's voice still lingering in his mind, every word etched into him. "We talked." She let out a short breath that almost sounded like a laugh. "Just talked." Jungkook didn't answer. That was enough. She nodded slowly, her gaze dropping for a moment before lifting again, stronger this time, more resolute. "I'm going to ask you something," she said, "and I need you to be honest, not careful, not polite, just honest." Jungkook felt his chest tighten. "Okay." She stood up, closing the distance between them until they were only a few steps apart. "If he asked you not to marry me," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor beneath it, "would you listen?" The question struck deep, immediate and merciless. Jungkook froze. His mind went blank for a split second, then flooded with everything he had tried to suppress. The way Jimin looked at him, the weight of his words, the silence that had spoken louder than anything else. Jungkook started but stopped. Because there was no safe answer. Her expression shifted instantly. "That's what I thought," she said softly. "It's not that simple," Jungkook said quickly, stepping forward. "You're asking me to." "To choose," she interrupted, her voice rising. "Yes, Jungkook, that's exactly what I'm asking you to do." The word echoed. Choose. He felt it settle in his chest, heavy and unavoidable. "I already chose," he insisted, though his voice lacked conviction. "Then why does it feel like I'm losing you?" she shot back. The question cut through him. "Because you're not listening to me," he said, frustration creeping in. "I'm here, are I?" "But your heart isn't," she replied immediately. Silence fell again, thick and suffocating. Jungkook ran a hand through his hair, packing slightly as if trying to outrun the pressure building inside him. "You think this is easy for me," he said. "You think I don't know how this looks." "I don't care how it looks," she said sharply. "I care about what it is." He stopped, turning back to face her. "And what do you think it is?" he asked. She didn't hesitate. "I think you're still in love with him." The words landed like a final blow. Jungkook's breath caught. "That's not," he started, but again the words failed him. Because denying it felt like lying. And confirming it felt like destruction. Her eyes filled with something raw, something unguarded. "Say it," she whispered. "Say it's not true." Jungkook opened his mouth. But nothing came out. And that silence broke her. She let out a shaky breath, stepping back as if the distance might protect her from what she was feeling. "I knew it," she said, her voice cracking despite her effort to stay composed. "I knew something was missing, but I thought it was just time, or stress, or anything but this." Jungkook took a step toward her. "It's not like that." "Then what is it like?" she demanded, her composure finally slipping. "Because I'm standing here, about to marry someone who can't even tell me he doesn't love someone else." "I never said I loved him," Jungkook said quickly. She stared at him, disbelief flashing across her face. "You didn't have to." The truth settled heavily between them. Jungkook felt his chest tighten, the weight of everything pressing down on him. "I care about you," he said, his voice softer now, almost pleading. "I really do." Her expression hardened. "I don't want care, Jungkook," she said. "I want certainty." He looked at her, really looked at her. The woman who had stood by him, who had built a future with him, who had said yes without knowing the full truth. And for the first time, he saw it clearly. The gap. The hesitation. The part of him that wasn't fully there. "I don't know if I can give you that right now," he admitted. The honesty hung in the air, brutal and irreversible. She closed her eyes briefly, as if steadying herself. "Then we shouldn't be getting married," she said. The words came out quietly, but they echoed louder than anything else. Jungkook felt his heart drop. "Wait," he started. "No," she said firmly, opening her eyes again. "Don't try to fix this with words you do mean." "I do mean them," he insisted. "Then prove it," she said. "Choose me, right now, no hesitation, no doubt." The challenge was clear. The answer should have been simple. But it was. Jungkook stood there, frozen, caught between two truths that refused to coexist. And his silence said everything. She nodded slowly, tears finally slipping past the composure she had fought so hard to maintain. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" Jungkook asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "For being honest," she replied, "even if it took you this long." She walked past him, heading toward the bedroom. "Where are you going?" he asked, his chest tightening. "To pack a few things," she said without turning around. "I'm staying somewhere else for a while." Jungkook felt a surge of panic. "You don't have to leave." "Yes, I do," she said. "Because if I stay, I'll keep hopping you'll choose me, and I don't think you will." The door to the bedroom closed softly behind her. And just like that, everything changed. Jungkook didn't remember how long he stood there. Minutes, hours, it all blurred together. The sound of drawers opening and closing echoed faintly from the other room, each one a quiet confirmation of what was happening. Of what he had allowed to happen. When she finally emerged, a small bag slung over her shoulder, Jungkook felt his chest tighten. "You're really leaving," he said. She nodded. "For now." He stepped closer. "What if I figure it out?" She met his gaze, her expression softer now, but no less resolute. "Then come find me," she said, "but don't come unless you're sure." Jungkook swallowed hard. "And if I'm not?" She hesitated for just a second. "Then don't," she said quietly. The simplicity of it hurt more than anything. She walked to the door, pausing briefly as her hand rested on the handle. "I hope you find your answer," she added, her voice barely above a whisper. And then she was gone. The apartment felt emptier than it ever had before. Jungkook stood in the silence, the weight of everything pressing down on him until it was almost unbearable. His phone buzzed. He didn't need to check to know who it was. But he did anyway. A single message. From Jimin. "I've made my decision." Jungkook's heart skipped. His fingers hovered over the screen for a moment before he opened it. "I'll come to your wedding." Jungkook stared at the words, his mind struggling to process them. He should have felt relief. Closure. Something. But instead, all he felt was something sharp and unfamiliar twisting in his chest. Because somehow, that answer felt more like a goodbye than anything else. The message didn't feel like an answer. It felt like an ending. Jungkook read it again, and then again, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something less final, something less suffocating. I'll come to your wedding. There was no hesitation in it, no hidden meaning, no space for interpretation. Jimin had decided. And somehow, that clarity made everything inside Jungkook unravel. His fingers hovered over the screen, unsure what to say, unsure if there was even anything left to say. 100 responses flickered through his mind, questions, arguments, confessions, but none of them felt right. Because this wasn't just about Jimin anymore. It was about the silence he had left behind in his own apartment. It was about the door that had closed behind someone who had chosen him, until he couldn't choose back. Jungkook exhaled sharply and grabbed his keys. Jimin opened the door faster this time, like he had been expecting him. You saw it, Jimin said, stepping aside before Jungkook could even speak. Jungkook walked in, tension radiating off him in waves. That's your answer. Jimin closed the door behind him. It is. Jungkook turned to face him, his eyes searching, almost desperate. You're coming to my wedding. Yes. Why? The question came out harsher than he intended. Why would you do that to yourself? Jimin leaned back against the wall, arms crossing loosely. Maybe I'm tired of running from things too. That's not the same, Jungkook said immediately. This isn't just facing things. This is watching me. Choose someone else, Jimin finished calmly. The words hung between them, heavy but no longer explosive. Jungkook clenched his jaw. You said it would break you. Jimin's gaze softened, but only slightly. It will. Then why? Because I need to see it, Jimin interrupted, his voice firmer now. I need to see you make that choice with my own eyes. Jungkook's chest tightened. And if I do? The question slipped out before he could stop it. Jimin's expression shifted, just for a second, before settling back into something unreadable. Then that's your answer, he said. Jungkook took a step closer. Your talking like this is already decided. Isn't it? Jimin shot back. You're the one getting married. Not anymore. The words fell out of Jungkook's mouth before he could think them through. Jimin froze. The air changed instantly. What? Jimin asked, his voice lower now, more cautious. Jungkook ran a hand through his hair, packing once before stopping again. She left. Jimin's brows furrowed. Left? Yes. Because of me? Jimin asked, the edge in his voice sharper now. No, Jungkook said quickly. Because of me. Silence stretched. What happened? Jimin asked. Jungkook let out a breath, his shoulders tense. She asked me if I would choose her. Right then, no hesitation. Jimin's gaze sharpened. And you didn't. Jungkook didn't answer. He didn't need to. Jimin looked away, exhaling slowly. Of course you didn't. I tried, Jungkook said, frustration creeping into his voice. I wanted to say it, I wanted to mean it. But you couldn't, Jimin said quietly. Jungkook shook his head. Not completely. The honesty lingered, raw and uncomfortable. And now, Jimin asked, what does that mean for the wedding? Jungkook let out a hollow laugh. I don't even know if there is one anymore. Jimin's eyes flickered with something. Relief, maybe, or something just as complicated. But it disappeared almost instantly. You're telling me, Jimin said slowly, that everything you built just collapsed overnight. It didn't collapse, Jungkook replied. It was already unstable, I just didn't want to see it. Jimin studied him carefully. And now you do. Jungkook met his gaze. Yes. The answer was steady. For the first time, there was no hesitation. And that scared him more than anything. Jimin pushed himself off the wall, stepping closer, his expression more guarded now. So what is this? He asked. You come here, tell me your fiancé left, your wedding might be off. What do you expect me to say? I don't know, Jungkook admitted, but I needed to tell you. Why? Jimin pressed. Because you think it changes something. Doesn't it? Jungkook shot back. Jimin let out a sharp breath, shaking his head. You don't get to do that. Do what? Turn everything upside down and then come here looking for answers, Jimin said, his voice rising slightly. You had your chance to figure this out before it hurt other people. I know that, Jungkook said. I'm not pretending I didn't mess up. Then what are you doing? Jimin demanded. Jungkook stepped closer, the distance between them shrinking again, charged and dangerous. I'm trying to fix it, he said. Jimin laughed, but there was no humor in it. Fix it? Jungkook, this isn't something you fix overnight. I'm not saying it is, Jungkook replied, but I can't keep pretending anymore. Jimin's expression hardened. Pretending about what? Jungkook hesitated, but only for a second. About how I feel, he said. The words settled heavily between them. Jimin's breath slowed, his eyes locking onto Jungkook, as if searching for any sign of uncertainty. There was none. That's a dangerous thing to admit now, Jimin said quietly. I know, Jungkook replied. Then why say it? Because you deserve the truth, Jungkook said. Jimin's jaw tightened. And what is the truth exactly? Jungkook stepped even closer, close enough that the space between them felt almost non-existent. The truth is, I never stopped thinking about you, he said, no matter how hard I tried. Jimin's breath hitched just slightly. That's not enough, Jimin said, though his voice lacked its earlier strength. I know, Jungkook said, but it's real. Silence stretched, thick with everything they weren't saying. Jimin looked away first, running a hand through his hair, his composure cracking just enough to reveal the storm underneath. You can't just walk back into my life and say things like that, he muttered. Not after everything. I'm not trying to walk back into your life, Jungkook said. I'm trying to understand why I never really left. The words hit harder than anything else. Jimin closed his eyes briefly, as if steadying himself. You're too late, he said again, but this time it sounded more like a warning than a conclusion. Am I? Jungkook asked. Jimin opened his eyes, meeting his gaze with something intense, something conflicted. Yes, he said. But he didn't step back. And that was the problem. Jungkook's voice dropped to almost a whisper. Then, why does it feel like you're still here with me? Jimin's breath caught. Because I never got closure, he admitted, the words slipping out before he could stop them. Jungkook felt his chest tighten. Then maybe this is it. Jimin shook his head. Closure doesn't look like this. Then what does it look like? Jungkook pressed. Jimin hesitated. And in that hesitation, Jungkook saw it. The same uncertainty. The same conflict. The same unresolved truth. You really want to know? Jimin asked. Yes. Jimin stepped closer, their faces inches apart now, the tension between them almost unbearable. Closure, Jimin said softly, is watching you walk away and knowing it doesn't hurt anymore. Jungkook's heart pounded. And does it? He asked. Jimin held his gaze. No. The honesty hit like a shockwave. Jungkook exhaled slowly, his voice barely steady. Then maybe this isn't over. Jimin's eyes flickered, something breaking through the walls he had tried so hard to maintain. Or maybe, Jimin said, this is exactly why it should be. The words lingered, fragile and heavy. Neither of them moved. Neither of them spoke. Because for the first time, they were standing at the edge of something neither of them could ignore anymore. And whatever came next would change everything. Say it. Jungkook's voice was low, almost trembling, but there was something unyielding beneath it now, something that refused to retreat again. Jimin didn't move. They were still standing too close, breaths uneven, the air between them thick with everything that had been held back for years. The city lights outside flickered through the rain-streaked glass, casting restless shadows across their faces. Say what? Jimin asked, though his voice had lost its earlier sharpness. The truth, Jungkook replied. Not the version you think I can handle, not the version that protects you, the real one. Jimin let out a slow breath, his gaze dropping for a moment before lifting again. You don't want that, he said quietly. I do. No, Jimin shook his head slightly. You want something that makes this easier, something that lets you walk away without feeling like you destroyed everything. Jungkook's jaw tightened. I'm not walking away. You already did, Jimin said, and this time there was no anger in it, just a quiet, brutal certainty. Something in Jungkook snapped. Then why are you still here? He demanded, his voice rising. Why are you standing this close to me, looking at me like that, if you're so sure it's over? Jimin flinched, just barely. Because I'm weak, he said, the words slipping out before he could stop them. The honesty hit harder than anything else. Jungkook stared at him. You're not weak. I am when it comes to you, Jimin replied immediately, his voice sharper now, defensive. I always have been. Silence followed, heavy and suffocating. Jungkook took another step closer, closing the last bit of distance between them. Then stop pretending you don't feel anything. I'm not pretending, Jimin said, but the conviction wasn't there. Then prove it, Jungkook challenged. Jimin let out a shaky breath, running a hand through his hair, packing a few steps away before turning back again. You want the truth, he said. Yes. Jimin laughed, but it was hollow, edged with something dangerously close to breaking. The truth is I hate you sometimes, he said. Jungkook froze. Jimin continued before he could react. I hate the way you walked away like I was something temporary. I hate the way you can stand here now and act like this is some kind of unfinished story instead of something you already ended. His voice tightened. And I hate that even after all of that, I still. He stopped abruptly. Jungkook's heart pounded. You still what? Jimin shook his head, stepping back again as if trying to put space between himself and the words. It doesn't matter, he muttered. It does to me, Jungkook said firmly. Jimin looked at him, something raw flashing across his face. Why? He demanded. Why does it matter now? Where was this 3 years ago when I needed you to say something like that? Jungkook's chest tightened painfully. I didn't understand it then, he said. I didn't understand how much it mattered. And now you do, Jimin asked, his voice cutting. Yes. The answer came without hesitation. And that terrified both of them. Jimin stared at him, searching for doubt, for hesitation, for anything that might make this easier to dismiss. There was none. That doesn't change what happened, Jimin said quietly. I know, Jungkook replied, but it changes what happens next. Jimin let out a bitter breath. You don't get to decide that on your own. I'm not, Jungkook said. I'm asking you to decide it with me. The words hung in the air, fragile but undeniable. Jimin shook his head slowly. You're asking me to risk everything again. I'm asking you to be honest about what you feel, Jungkook said. I already told you, Jimin replied. It still hurts. That's not all of it, Jungkook said, his voice softening. You stopped yourself earlier, you said you still. Don't, Jimin interrupted, sharper this time. Why not? Jungkook pressed. Because saying it makes it real. It's already real, Jimin shot back. That's the problem. Jungkook stepped closer again, his voice dropping. Then say it. Jimin's breath hitched. For a moment, it felt like the entire world had narrowed down to this one point, this one truth hanging between them, waiting to be acknowledged. I still love you, Jimin said. The words came out quietly, but they shattered everything. Jungkook felt it in his chest, in his lungs, in the way his breath suddenly became too heavy, too difficult. Neither of them moved. Neither of them spoke, because there was nothing left to hide behind. Jimin let out a shaky breath, as if the confession had taken something out of him. There, he said, his voice quieter now. That's the truth you wanted. Jungkook swallowed hard. Why didn't you say it before? Jimin laughed softly, exhaustion creeping into his expression. Because it doesn't change anything. It changes everything, Jungkook said. No, Jimin shook his head. It just makes it harder. Jungkook stepped even closer, close enough that there was no space left between them. "It doesn't have to be," he said. Jimin looked at him, his eyes searching, conflicted. "You don't understand what you're asking," he said. "Then explain it to me," Jungkook replied. Jimin hesitated, then spoke, his voice low and steady. "You're asking me to trust you again, to believe that this time you won't walk away when it gets complicated, that this isn't just another moment where you finally admit how you feel and then decide it's too much." His gaze hardened slightly. "You're asking me to risk breaking all over again." Jungkook felt the weight of those words settle in his chest. "I won't walk away," he said. Jimin's lips pressed into a thin line. "You said that before." "No," Jungkook shook his head. "I never said it before, that's the problem." Silence fell again. Jimin studied him carefully, as if trying to determine whether this version of Jungkook was real or just another illusion. "And what about her?" Jimin asked suddenly. The question cut through the moment. Jungkook's expression faltered. "She matters too," Jimin continued. "You don't get to just erase her from this." "I'm not trying to erase her," Jungkook said, "but I can't marry her if I'm not fully there." Jimin nodded slowly. "At least you're honest about that now." Jungkook ran a hand through his hair. "I never wanted to hurt her." "And yet you did," Jimin said quietly. "I know." "And what makes you think you won't do the same to me?" Jimin asked. The question lingered, heavy and unavoidable. Jungkook didn't answer right away. Because this time, he understood something he hadn't before. There were no guarantees. Only choices. Only risks. Only consequences. "I don't know," he admitted finally. Jimin's expression tightened, but he didn't look away. "But I know I don't want to keep living like this," Jungkook continued. "Pretending I don't feel something I clearly do. Pretending I can just move on like nothing ever happened." Jimin's breath slowed, his gaze softening slightly. "And what do you want?" he asked. Jungkook didn't hesitate this time. "You," he said. The word was simple, but it carried everything. Jimin's eyes widened slightly, his composure cracking under the weight of it. "You don't get to say that like it's easy," he said, his voice quieter now. "It's not easy," Jungkook replied. "It's terrifying." "Then why say it?" "Because it's true." The silence that followed was different. Not empty. Not suffocating. But fragile. Uncertain. Full of possibilities that neither of them knew how to handle. Jimin looked at him for a long moment, his expression shifting, breaking, rebuilding. "You're asking me to believe in something that already broke once," he said. "I'm asking you to decide if it's worth trying again," Jungkook replied. Jimin let out a slow breath, his eyes drifting closed for a moment. When he opened them again, something had changed. Not completely, but enough. "This doesn't fix anything," he said. "I know." "It doesn't erase what happened." "I know." "And it doesn't guarantee anything," Jimin added. Jungkook nodded. "I know." Jimin studied him for another long moment. Then finally he spoke. "Then prove it." Jungkook's heart pounded. "How?" Jimin held his gaze, unwavering. "Walk away from everything you built for the wrong reasons," he said. "Not for me, not for us, but because you finally understand it wasn't right." The words settled heavily between them. Jungkook swallowed. Because this was it. The line he couldn't stand on forever. The choice he could no longer avoid. And for the first time, he knew exactly what he had to do. "I already did." Jungkook's voice was steady, but it carried something deeper now, something irreversible. Jimin didn't react immediately. He just stared at him, as if trying to process whether those words were real or just another moment that would dissolve by morning. "What do you mean?" Jimin asked quietly. Jungkook didn't look away. "I told you, she left and I didn't stop her." "That's not the same," Jimin replied, his tone tightening. "That's not you walking away. That's you letting things fall apart. Jungkook took a step closer. Then what do you want from me? To chase her? To fix something I already know isn't right? Jimin's jaw clenched. I want you to be sure. I am sure, Jungkook said. No, you're not, Jimin shot back immediately. You're reacting, there's a difference. The words hit harder than Jungkook expected. I'm not reacting, he insisted. I've been avoiding this for years. This, he gestured between them, this is the first time I'm actually facing it. Jimin shook his head slowly. Facing it doesn't mean you understand it. Then help me understand, Jungkook said, frustration creeping in. Because I'm standing here telling you exactly how I feel, and you're still pushing me away. I'm not pushing you away, Jimin said, his voice rising slightly. I'm trying to protect both of us from making the same mistake twice. Jungkook let out a sharp breath. Loving someone isn't a mistake. No, Jimin said, his eyes locking onto Jungkook's. But the way we handled it was. Silence fell, heavy with truth. Jungkook swallowed, his chest tightening. Then we do it differently this time. Jimin laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. You say that like it's easy. I'm not saying it's easy, Jungkook replied. I'm saying it's worth it. Jimin's expression flickered, something fragile surfacing before he forced it back down. You don't get to decide that for me, he said. I'm not deciding for you, Jungkook said. I'm asking you to decide with me. Jimin turned away, packing a few steps as if trying to create distance. As if the space might help him think. You think this is just about feelings, he said, his voice quieter now but still tense. But it's not. It's about trust. It's about whether I can believe that you won't walk away again when things get complicated. Jungkook watched him closely. I won't. You don't know that, Jimin shot back. I do, Jungkook said firmly. Based on what? Jimin challenged, turning back to face him. Because right now, all I see is someone who realized something too late and is trying to fix it before he loses everything. Jungkook felt the words hit deep, but this time he didn't back down. Maybe that's exactly what this is, he admitted. Maybe I did realize it too late. Maybe I am trying to fix it, but that doesn't make it any less real. Jimin's gaze faltered for a moment. That's not enough, he said. Then what is? Jungkook asked. Jimin hesitated. And for the first time, he didn't have an immediate answer. The silence stretched, filled with something heavier than before, not just tension, but the weight of a decision that couldn't be undone. You want proof, Jimin said finally. Yes. Jimin stepped closer again, his expression intense, searching. Call her, he said. Jungkook blinked. What? Call her, Jimin repeated. Right now. Jungkook's chest tightened. Why? Because if you're really sure, Jimin said, his voice steady, then you should be able to tell her the truth. Not later. Not after you've figured everything out. Now. The challenge landed hard. Jungkook hesitated, his phone suddenly feeling heavier in his pocket. You're asking me to hurt her even more, he said. I'm asking you to stop lying to her, Jimin replied, and to yourself. The words echoed. Jungkook exhaled slowly, his mind racing. This was it. Not just words. Not just promises. Action. Real, undeniable, irreversible action. Fine, he said quietly. He pulled his phone out, his fingers hovering over the screen for a moment before finding her name. Jimin didn't look away. The call rang once. Twice. 3 times. Then, Jungkook. Her voice came through, soft but cautious, like she already knew this call wasn't going to be easy. Jungkook swallowed hard. Hey. A brief silence. Did you figure it out? She asked. The question hit immediately. Jungkook closed his eyes for a second, steadying himself. Yes, he said. Jimin watched him, his expression unreadable but his attention unwavering. And, she asked. Jungkook opened his eyes again, his gaze flickering to Jimin for just a moment before focusing forward. I can't marry you, he said. The words hung in the air, final and heavy. Silence on the other end. Then a quiet breath. I see, she said. Jungkook's chest tightened. I'm sorry. Don't apologize unless you mean it, she replied gently. I do mean it, he said. You didn't deserve any of this. No, she said softly. I didn't. The honesty hurt more than anger would have. Jungkook ran a hand through his hair, his voice quieter now. I thought I could give you what you needed. I really did. But you couldn't, she finished. No. Another pause. And it's him, isn't it? She asked. Jungkook didn't answer. He didn't have to. I thought so, she said. Jungkook felt his chest tighten painfully. I never meant for it to happen like this. Feelings don't ask for permission, she replied, but choices do. The words settled heavily. I hope you're making the right one, she added. Jungkook glanced at Jimin again, his heart pounding. I think I am, he said. A soft exhale came through the phone. Then don't waste it, she said. Because if you hurt him the way you hurt me, I don't think either of you will recover from that. Jungkook's throat tightened. I won't. There was a long pause. Then, goodbye, Jungkook. The line went dead. Jungkook lowered the phone slowly, the weight of what he had just done settling over him like a storm finally breaking. The silence in the room was different now. Heavier. Real. He looked up at Jimin. I did it, he said. Jimin didn't respond immediately. His eyes searched Jungkook's face, as if trying to find any sign of doubt, any trace of hesitation. There was none, and that terrified him. You just ended your engagement, Jimin said quietly. I know. For me. Jungkook shook his head. For the truth. Jimin let out a slow breath, running a hand through his hair, his composure slipping just enough to reveal the conflict underneath. This is real now, he said. There's no going back. I don't want to go back, Jungkook replied. Jimin looked at him, really looked at him, as if seeing him clearly for the first time. And what if this doesn't work? He asked. Jungkook didn't hesitate. Then at least we'll know we didn't run from it. The answer lingered, raw and honest. Jimin's expression shifted, something breaking, something rebuilding. You're asking me to trust you again, he said. Yes. And you think one phone call is enough to prove that? No, Jungkook admitted, but it's a start. Jimin let out a quiet, almost defeated laugh. You always did things like this, he said. Big, dramatic decisions that change everything in an instant. Maybe, Jungkook said, but this time I'm not running from it afterward. Jimin studied him for a long moment, his gaze searching for something deeper than words. What happens now? He asked. Jungkook stepped closer, the space between them shrinking once again. Now, he said, we figure out what this actually means. Jimin's breath hitched slightly, his eyes flickering with uncertainty, with hope, with fear. And if it falls apart again? He asked. Jungkook's voice softened. Then we face it, he said, together this time. The words settled between them, fragile but undeniable. Jimin looked at him, his defenses slowly lowering, piece by piece. This doesn't fix everything, he said. I know. It doesn't erase the past. I know. And it doesn't guarantee a future. Jungkook held his gaze. I know. Silence followed. But this time, it wasn't suffocating. It was something else. Something open. Something uncertain. Something real. Jimin stepped closer, until there was no space left between them. For a moment, neither of them moved. Neither of them spoke. Because this was the moment everything balanced on. Not the past. Not the future. Just this. Jimin's voice was barely a whisper. If we do this, there's no pretending anymore. Jungkook nodded. No pretending. Jimin searched his eyes one last time. Then, slowly, carefully. He let himself believe it. The silence didn't break. It shifted. Something fragile but undeniable settled between them, like a thread pulled too tight. One wrong move, and it would snap again. Jungkook could feel it in the way Jimin didn't step away this time, in the way his breath stayed uneven, in the way his eyes refused to leave Jungkook's face. If we do this, there's no pretending anymore. Jimin's words lingered, quieter now but heavier than anything that had been said before. I know, Jungkook replied. But knowing wasn't the same as understanding. And Jimin saw that immediately. You don't, Jimin said softly. Jungkook frowned. What do you mean? Jimin took a step back, not far but enough to create space, enough to breathe. You think this is about finally saying what we couldn't say before, he continued. About admitting something we both already knew. His voice tightened. But it's not just that. Jungkook watched him carefully. Then what is it? It's about what happens after, Jimin said. After the confession, after the decision, after the moment passes and we're left with everything we tried to ignore. Jungkook felt his chest tighten. We deal with it. Jimin shook his head slightly. That's exactly what you said back then. That's not fair, Jungkook replied, frustration creeping back in. I didn't deal with it back then. I ran, I admitted that. And what makes you so sure you won't do it again? Jimin asked. The question wasn't loud, but it cut deeper than anything else. Jungkook opened his mouth, ready to answer, but stopped. Because this time, he refused to give an answer that sounded right, but meant nothing. I'm not sure, he admitted. Jimin's expression flickered, something between disappointment and relief. At least you're honest, he said. But I'm here, Jungkook added quickly. That has to mean something. It does, Jimin said, but it's not enough on its own. The tension shifted again, heavier now, more grounded in reality than emotion. Jungkook ran a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply. Then what do you want from me? Jimin didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked past Jungkook, toward the window, the same place he had stood just the night before. The rain had softened now, turning into a quiet drizzle. The city lights reflecting faintly against the glass. I want you to understand what this costs, Jimin said finally. Jungkook turned toward him. I do. No, Jimin said, glancing back over his shoulder. You understand what it costs you, not what it costs me. The words landed heavily. Jungkook stepped closer. Then tell me. Jimin hesitated, his fingers brushing lightly against the cold glass. It costs me control, he said. It costs me the distance I spent years building just to feel okay again. His voice dropped. It costs me the version of myself that finally learned how to live without you. Jungkook felt something twist painfully in his chest. I'm not asking you to lose that, he said. But you are, Jimin replied. The moment I let you back in, all of that disappears. Jungkook shook his head. It doesn't have to. Jimin turned to face him fully now, his eyes sharper, more intense. That's the problem, he said. You keep thinking this can be controlled, that we can just manage it better this time. And you think we can't, Jungkook challenged. Jimin held his gaze. I think we can try, he said, but trying doesn't guarantee anything. That's true for everything, Jungkook replied. Not just this. Jimin let out a quiet breath. This is different. Why? Jungkook asked. Because it's you, Jimin said. The simplicity of it hit harder than anything else. Jungkook stepped closer again, his voice softening. Then maybe that's exactly why it's worth it. Jimin didn't answer. But he didn't look away either. The silence stretched, filled with something fragile, something uncertain, something dangerously close to hope. Then, stay. The word slipped out before Jimin could stop it. Jungkook blinked. What? Jimin looked at him, something vulnerable breaking through his usual composure. Stay, he repeated, quieter now. Not forever, not as some kind of promise, just tonight. Jungkook's heart pounded. You're sure? He asked. Jimin hesitated. No, he admitted, but I don't think I'm ever going to be sure. Jungkook nodded slowly. That's okay. The decision wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. But it changed everything. The night unfolded differently than either of them expected. There were no grand declarations, no sudden resolutions. Just conversation. Raw, unfiltered, and at times painfully honest. They sat on opposite sides of the room at first, the distance between them mirroring the uncertainty they were trying to navigate. You really thought it would just fade? Jimin asked at one point, his voice quieter now, less defensive. Jungkook nodded. I wanted it too. And when it did, I ignored it, Jungkook admitted. I convinced myself it was just memory, habit, anything but what it actually was. Jimin studied him, and now... Jungkook met his gaze. Now I know better. Jimin let out a soft breath, leaning back slightly. You always do this. What? You wait until things are unbearable before you face them, Jimin said. Jungkook didn't argue. Because it was true. I'm trying not to do that anymore, he said instead. Jimin's lips pressed into a thin line. Trying. It's all I have right now, Jungkook replied. Silence followed, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was real. Later, the distance between them closed without either of them fully realizing it. They ended up sitting on the same couch, close enough that their shoulders brushed occasionally, each contact sending a quiet tension through the air. Does it scare you? Jungkook asked softly. Jimin didn't pretend to misunderstand. Yes. Me too, Jungkook admitted. Jimin glanced at him, something softer in his expression now. You don't look scared. I am, Jungkook said. I just don't want that to stop me this time. Jimin looked at him for a long moment, as if trying to decide whether to believe that. You always look so sure when you say things like that, he said. I'm not, Jungkook replied. I just don't want to hide anymore. Jimin's gaze lingered. Neither do I, he said quietly. The words shifted something between them. Not dramatically, but enough. The space between them felt smaller now, the tension less about conflict and more about something unspoken, something waiting. Jungkook, Jimin said after a moment. Yeah. If this goes wrong, he started, then stopped. Jungkook turned slightly toward him. Then we deal with it. Jimin shook his head faintly. You make it sound simple. It's not, Jungkook said, but it's honest. Jimin let out a soft breath, his gaze dropping briefly before lifting again. That's new, he said. Jungkook smiled faintly. I'm trying. Jimin didn't smile back. But he didn't look away either. The night grew quieter as the hours passed, the storm outside fading into nothing more than a distant memory. At some point, the conversation slowed. Not because there was nothing left to say, but because there was too much. Jimin leaned back slightly, his head resting against the couch, his eyes half closed. Jungkook watched him, something unfamiliar settling in his chest. Not just longing, not just regret, but something steadier. Something that felt like the beginning of understanding. You can still leave, Jimin said suddenly, his eyes opening again. Before this gets harder. Jungkook shook his head. I'm not leaving. Jimin studied him carefully. Don't say that unless you mean it. I mean it. The certainty in Jungkook's voice was different this time. Quieter, but stronger. Jimin held his gaze for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. Okay, he said. It wasn't a promise. It wasn't a resolution. But it was enough. And for the first time, they allowed themselves to stay. You're still going to marry her, aren't you? Jimin's voice cut through the quiet like glass cracking under pressure. The question came out of nowhere, but at the same time, it had been waiting all night, hiding behind every pause, every glance, every almost confession. Jungkook froze. The weight of it hit instantly, dragging everything back into focus. The wedding, the promise, the life he had already set in motion. Jungkook hesitated, his throat tightening. I don't know. Jimin let out a short, humorless laugh, pushing himself off the couch. You don't know. It's not that simple, Jungkook said quickly, standing up as well. It is that simple, Jimin shot back, turning to face him. His eyes were sharp again, the vulnerability from earlier retreating behind something colder. You're either going to marry her or you're not. Jungkook ran a hand through his hair, frustration rising. You think I don't understand that? Then act like it, Jimin said. I am, Jungkook snapped. I'm here or I. Jimin's expression hardened. That's exactly the problem. You're here but you're still hers. The words hit harder than expected. Jungkook took a step closer, his voice lowering. Don't do that. Do what? Jimin challenged. Make it sound like I'm playing both sides, Jungkook said. Jimin's jaw tightened. Aren't you? The silence that followed was suffocating. Because Jungkook didn't answer. And that was answer enough. Jimin shook his head slowly, looking away for a moment as if trying to steady himself. This is what I was talking about, he said, his voice quieter but more controlled. This is exactly why I said it's not enough that you're here. I'm trying to figure it out, Jungkook insisted. No, Jimin said, turning back to him. You're avoiding it. That's not true. Then tell me, Jimin pressed, stepping closer now, his presence intense. If she walked in right now and asked you to choose, what would you say? Jungkook's breath caught. His mind raced, but no words came out. Jimin watched him, and something inside his expression shifted. Not anger this time, not even disappointment. Something worse. Understanding. Yeah, Jimin whispered. Jimin, Jungkook started. Don't, Jimin cut him off, stepping back again. Don't try to fix it with words now. I'm not trying to fix it, Jungkook said, his voice strained. I'm trying to be honest. Then be honest, Jimin said, with yourself first. Jungkook clenched his fists slightly. You think this is easy for me? No, Jimin said. I think it's easier for you than it is for me. That stung. You don't get to decide that, Jungkook said. I don't have to, Jimin replied. Your actions already did. The tension in the room snapped back into something volatile, something sharp and dangerous. Jungkook exhaled harshly. So what do you want me to do? Cancel the wedding overnight? Break everything apart without thinking it through? Jimin's eyes flashed. If you need that much time to decide, then maybe you already have your answer. That's not fair, Jungkook snapped. Neither is this, Jimin shot back. The words hung between them, heavy and unrelenting. Jungkook took a step closer again, his voice dropping. I came here because I couldn't pretend anymore. And I let you stay because I couldn't either, Jimin replied. But that doesn't mean I'm going to stand here while you figure out whether I'm worth the risk. Jungkook's expression tightened. That's not what this is. Then what is it? Jimin demanded. Jungkook hesitated again. And that hesitation was louder than any answer. Jimin let out a slow breath, his shoulders dropping slightly as if something inside him had finally settled. Do you know what hurts the most? He asked quietly. Jungkook swallowed. What? It's not that you're getting married, Jimin said. It's that even now, after everything you said tonight, I'm still not your first choice. Jungkook's chest tightened painfully. That's not true. Then prove it, Jimin said. The challenge wasn't loud, but it was absolute. Jungkook stood there, staring at him, his mind spinning, his heart pounding. Jimin, he started, his voice softer now. I don't want to lose you again. Jimin's expression flickered. Then don't. It's not that simple, Jungkook said again, almost helplessly. Jimin shook his head. You keep saying that, but it is. You're just afraid of what choosing actually means. Jungkook looked at him, frustration and something deeper clashing in his eyes. Of course I'm afraid. You think I'm not aware of what I'd be giving up. And you think I'm not aware of what I'd be risking, Jimin replied. The air between them felt electric now, every word sparking something more intense. You're asking me to destroy a life I've already built, Jungkook said. And you're asking me to rebuild something that already broke once, Jimin shot back. The silence that followed was deafening. Because both of them were right. And neither of them knew how to move forward. Jungkook closed his eyes briefly, then opened them again, his voice quieter. If I walk away from her, it's not just about me, it affects everyone. Jimin nodded slowly. I know. There are expectations, families, promises. I said I know, Jimin interrupted, his voice sharper now. You think I haven't thought about that. You think I don't understand the consequences. Then why are you pushing me like this? Jungkook asked. Because I refuse to be your secret, Jimin said. The words landed like a final blow. Jungkook stared at him, his expression shifting. You think that's what I'm trying to do? I think you don't know what you're trying to do, Jimin replied. Jungkook let out a frustrated breath, packing slightly before stopping again. This isn't just about love, he said. Jimin's gaze didn't waver. It never was. That quiet acknowledgement changed something. Because suddenly, it wasn't just about feelings. It was about reality. About consequences. About choices that couldn't be undone. Jungkook looked at him, his voice softer now, almost pleading. If I need time, will you wait? Jimin didn't answer immediately. Instead, he studied Jungkook carefully, as if trying to see past the words, past the uncertainty, into something deeper. I already waited once, he said finally. Jungkook's chest tightened, and Jimin's lips pressed together briefly before he spoke again. And it nearly broke me. The honesty in his voice was raw, unguarded. Jungkook stepped closer, his expression softening. I don't want to do that to you again. Then don't, Jimin said. Jungkook exhaled shakily. You're asking me to decide everything right now. I'm asking you to stop pretending you don't already know, Jimin replied. The room fell into silence again. But this time, it wasn't uncertain. It was inevitable. Jungkook looked at him, really looked at him. The exhaustion in his eyes, the guarded hope, the fear he was trying so hard not to show. And something inside Jungkook shifted. Not suddenly. Not dramatically. But undeniably. I need to talk to her, Jungkook said finally. Jimin's expression didn't change. Of course you do. But not to delay things, Jungkook added quickly. To be honest. Jimin held his gaze. That's the only way this works. Jungkook nodded slowly, as if grounding himself in the decision. I'm going to tell her everything, he said. The words felt heavy. Real. Irreversible. Jimin's breath hitched almost imperceptibly. Everything, he repeated. Jungkook met his eyes. Yes. The air shifted again, something intense and fragile filling the space between them. Jimin nodded slowly, though his expression remained guarded. Then go, he said. Jungkook hesitated. Right now. Jimin looked at him steadily. If you wait, you'll find a reason not to. Jungkook knew he was right. He took a step back, then another, his heart pounding louder with each movement. But before he could turn away, Jungkook. He stopped. Jimin's voice was softer now, almost fragile. If you come back, he said, his words slow, deliberate, come back because you chose me, not because you lost everything else. Jungkook turned to look at him, something resolute settling in his expression. I understand. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Jungkook nodded once and walked out. The door closed behind him with a quiet finality. And Jimin was left standing there, alone again. But this time, it felt different. I can't marry you. The words left Jungkook's lips before fear could stop them. The room fell into a suffocating silence. Across from him, she stood frozen, her expression unreadable at first, like her mind hadn't caught up with what her ears had just heard. What did you just say? Her voice came out quiet, dangerously calm. Jungkook swallowed, his heart pounding so violently it almost drowned out his own thoughts. I'm sorry. Her laugh came suddenly, sharp and disbelieving. No, don't do that. Don't say sorry like you forgot to pick up groceries. Say it properly. Jungkook forced himself to meet her eyes. I can't go through with the wedding. The words landed heavier this time. Real. Irreversible. Her expression cracked. Why? She demanded, stepping closer. After everything, after all the plans, the families, the promises, why now? Jungkook hesitated. Not because he didn't know the answer, but because saying it out loud would destroy something that had once been safe, steady, and real. There's someone else, he said finally. The truth hit like a detonation. She stared at him, her eyes searching his face for any sign that this was a lie, a mistake, something that could still be undone. Someone else, she repeated. Jungkook nodded slowly. Her voice dropped. Since when? Jungkook exhaled shakily. Not since, it's always been there. The realization spread across her face slowly, painfully. Always, she whispered. So I was what then, a distraction, a second choice? No, Jungkook said quickly, stepping forward. You were real, everything with you was real. But not enough, she said, her voice breaking despite her effort to stay composed. Jungkook didn't respond. Because he couldn't lie. And she saw that. Wow, she let out a hollow laugh, tears finally slipping down her cheeks. You really waited until the last moment to destroy everything, didn't you? I didn't mean to hurt you, Jungkook said, his voice strained. But you did, she shot back. You knew and you still let this go on. You still let me believe. Her voice broke, and she turned away, pressing a hand to her mouth as if trying to hold herself together. Guilt tore through Jungkook's chest, sharp and merciless. I thought I could move on, he said quietly. I thought if I tried hard enough, it would be enough. And, she asked without turning around. It was. Silence filled the space between them, heavy with everything that had just shattered. After a moment, she wiped her tears and turned back to him, her expression different now, no longer pleading, no longer searching. Just distant. Who is it? She asked. Jungkook hesitated again. But this time, only for a second. Jimin. The name hung in the air, like something sacred and devastating all at once. Her eyes widened slightly, recognition flickering through the pain. I should have known, she said softly. Jungkook frowned. What do you mean? The way you said his name sometimes, she replied. The way you went quiet whenever he came up, I thought it was just history. She shook her head faintly. I didn't realize it was unfinished. Jungkook didn't know what to say. Because she wasn't wrong. She let out a long, shaky breath, straightening her posture as if gathering what little strength she had left. So what now? She asked. Jungkook's voice was quiet. Now I stop lying, to you, to myself. She studied him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. Then go, she said. Jungkook blinked. What? Go, she repeated. Her voice steadier now. Be with the person you couldn't forget. A bitter smile touched her lips. At least one of us should end up with something real. The words hit harder than anger ever could. Jungkook felt his throat tighten. You deserve better than this. I know, she said simply, and I'll find it, just not with you. There was nothing left to argue. Nothing left to fix. Jungkook nodded slowly, his chest heavy with regret, but also with something else. Clarity. Thank you, he said quietly. She didn't respond. And he didn't expect her to. With one last glance, Jungkook turned and walked away. The city felt different that night. Louder. Sharper. As if everything had shifted slightly out of place. Jungkook barely noticed the streets as he moved, his thoughts racing, his heartbeat refusing to slow. Every step felt heavier than the last. Because this time, there was no going back. When he finally reached Jimin's place, he didn't knock immediately. He stood there for a moment, staring at the door, his reflection faintly visible in the glass. This was it. No more hesitation. No more half choices. He knocked. The sound echoed louder than expected. Footsteps approached from the other side, slow, measured. The door opened, and there Jimin stood. For a second, neither of them spoke. Jimin's eyes searched Jungkook's face, as if trying to read the answer before it was given. "You came back," he said quietly. Jungkook nodded, his breath uneven. "I told you I would." Jimin's gaze sharpened slightly. "That doesn't mean anything unless—" "I told her," Jungkook interrupted. The words settled between them instantly. Jimin froze. "You what?" "I ended it," Jungkook said. "I told her everything." Silence. Heavy. Unbelievable. Jimin took a step back, as if the weight of that confession physically pushed him. "You're serious," he whispered. Jungkook met his eyes. "I've never been more serious about anything." Jimin ran a hand through his hair, packing slightly, his emotions visibly colliding. "You actually did it," he said, almost to himself. "I said I would be honest," Jungkook replied. Jimin stopped, turning to face him again. "And now?" he asked. Jungkook stepped forward, closing the distance between them. "Now I choose you." The words were simple, but they carried everything. Every doubt. Every fear. Every moment they had lost. Jimin's breath caught, his eyes searching Jungkook's face for any sign of uncertainty. There was none. "Do you have any idea what that means?" Jimin asked, his voice trembling slightly. "Yes," Jungkook said. "It means there's no safety net," Jimin continued. "No going back to something easier if this gets hard." "I know. It means if we fail." "We won't," Jungkook said, cutting him off gently. Jimin shook his head. "You can't promise that." "No," Jungkook admitted, "but I can promise I won't run." The words settled into something solid between them. Jimin stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, the tension in his shoulders eased. "Not completely, but enough." "You really changed," he said quietly. Jungkook shook his head slightly. "No, I just stopped pretending." A small, almost disbelieving smile touched Jimin's lips. "You always say things like that," he murmured. "And this time I mean them," Jungkook replied. Jimin's gaze softened, something warm breaking through the fear, the hesitation, the years of distance. "Come here," he said softly. Jungkook didn't hesitate. He closed the gap between them, and this time there was no uncertainty in the way they moved, no hesitation in the way they held onto each other. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy. But it was real. And for the first time, that was enough. The wedding invitation still sat on Jungkook's table days later. Unopened. Unsent. A quiet reminder of the life he had almost lived. Jimin noticed it the first time he visited, his fingers brushing lightly over the envelope before he glanced at Jungkook. "No regrets?" he asked. Jungkook walked over, taking the invitation and placing it back down without opening it. "No," he said. Jimin studied him carefully. "Not even a little." Jungkook smiled faintly. "Regret doesn't come from choosing something real, it comes from avoiding it." Jimin's lips curved slightly at that. "You've gotten better at this," he said. "At what?" "Being honest," Jimin replied. Jungkook chuckled softly. "I had a good reason to learn." Jimin raised an eyebrow. "Oh." Jungkook stepped closer, his voice quieter now. "Yeah," he said. "I didn't want to lose you again." Jimin's expression softened, something unspoken passing between them. "Then don't," he said. Jungkook nodded. "I won't." And this time, there were no more conditions. No more unanswered questions. Just two people standing in the aftermath of everything they had broken and rebuilt, choosing each other not because it was easy, but because it was true. The future ahead of them was uncertain, complicated, and far from perfect. But it was theirs. And for the first time, that uncertainty didn't feel like fear. It felt like freedom,